welcome to another webinar series, Nutrition and Foods with Context. I'm Melanie Bana, a third-year McGill's dietetic student, and today our topic will be all about quinoa. So let's take a look at today's outline. So first we'll look into what is quinoa, then how is it grown? Is it a sustainable plant? What is the nutritional value and the health benefits? And then we'll dig into today's recipe, which will be a quinoa Greek salad. And then we look into other ways to add quinoa into our diet. So what is quinoa? So plant experts classify quinoa as a pseudo-cereal and not a grain. This basically means that it is a non-grassy plant that food producers can use in much the same way as cereals and grains. It's made from the seeds of the Quinopodium plant, as you can see on the slide's background. It is a staple food of the Andean culture since 3000 BC, and it's sometimes referred to as Inca rice. The Incas of the South America called it the mother of all grains. Now, quinoa grows in many different colors, but white, red, yellow, and black seeds are the ones that are most commonly harvested for consumption, and they each have their own culinary nuances. So white and yellow are the most common variety, and they take the shortest amount of time to cook. They also have the mildest flavor, so they're good varieties to try first. Red and black quinoa, they both have a stronger, earthier flavor. Red takes a little longer time to cook, while black requires the longest cooking time. And finally, red quinoa holds its shape pretty well, and so it's a good choice to add for salads. So where does quinoa grow? So as you can see on the map, quinoa is now grown in several countries around the world, including the United States, Canada, Italy, Sweden, and India. But most of it is still grown in Peru and Bolivia, represented in red on the map. So how is it grown? Quinoa is usually harvested by hand due to the differing levels of maturity that the seeds will usually have even within one plant. And so seed losses may occur if mechanically harvested. However, in the US, seed varieties that have a more consistent maturity are selected to allow for mechanical processing. Now, is quinoa sustainable? So areas that suffer from food insecurity often suffer from harsh conditions. Amazingly, there are tolerant varieties of quinoa with the plasticity to resist these exact environmental conditions. So the quinoa plant is frost resistant, salt tolerant, drought tolerant, and it can be grown in poor soil. As a matter of fact, quinoa demands only 30% of the water that rice requires, and therefore it could be instrumental to feeding the world as the effects of climate change escalate. Additionally, quinoa can be produced at low cost and can offer poverty-stricken communities high nutritional value to fight malnutrition. So we'll take a look at the nutritional value on the next slide. However, increased demand had led to unsustainable farming practices. So farmers trying to keep up with demand and make more profit abandoned tradition. Indeed, the quinoa boom in 2013 had very negative impacts on the Peruvian farmland and the environment. What is the nutritional value? So unlike some plant protein, quinoa is a complete protein, meaning that it contains all 9 essential amino acids that our bodies cannot make on their own and therefore would require from an outside place. Quinoa is a non-GMO, gluten-free, and usually grown organically. Even though it's technically not a cereal grain, it still counts as a whole grain food. Quinoa is a great source of iron, magnesium, phosphorus, manganese, and zinc. So B vitamins like thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, vitamin B6, and folate, which are very much found in the quinoa, are important for making sure the body cells are functioning properly. They help the body convert food into energy, create new blood cells, maintain healthy skin, maintain brain cells, and other body tissues. Minerals like magnesium, potassium, and iron as well found in the quinoa are important for your muscle function and for helping to transport oxygen in your blood to where it is needed in your muscles and in your brain. So as you can see on the nutrition facts table, it is a grain that is also low in fats. It is quite high in protein and it's also a complete protein. And finally, it's quite high in dietary fiber. Now let's look into the health benefits of quinoa. So fiber is beneficial for digestion, managing blood sugar levels, and satiety control. Satiety control basically means it's this feeling of fullness. Basically, once you have a bit of fiber in in whatever food you're eating, you'll feel full for longer, and that is great for weight control and body control. Protein helps to grow and maintain muscle mass and satiety control as well. It's also very high in antioxidants. So what are antioxidants? They're substances that can prevent or slow damage to cell caused by free radicals. Free radicals are unstable molecules that the body produces as a reaction to environmental and other pressures as well. So antioxidants may reduce the risk of many diseases, including heart disease and certain cancers. It is also a low glycemic index food. So the glycemic index is a measure of how quickly foods raise your blood sugar levels. And so being a low glycemic index food, it is also beneficial for managing blood sugar levels and as well satiety control. So what about storing quinoa? So similar to other dry grains, dried quinoa or uncooked quinoa should be stored in an airtight container in a cool, dark place to prevent moisture and insects from getting into it. Once quinoa is cooked, it will stay fresh in the fridge for up to 5 days. You can also batch cook it and store it in the freezer in serving size portions for up to a month. Now for cooking quinoa. So quinoa contains a bitter tasting compound called saponin, and this usually keeps insect away without the need of pesticides. These are especially concentrated in the outer coating of quinoa. So what manufacturers do is that they can easily remove saponins by rinsing the quinoa with water. Um, Even though those producers of most packaged quinoa have already removed most of the saponins, people may still wish to give it that extra rinse before consuming it. Quinoa cooks like rice, but quicker, so just follow the cooking instructions on the package. It usually takes up to 15 to 20 minutes. 1 cup of dry quinoa makes 3 cups of cooked quinoa or 4 to 6 servings. And finally, for added flavor, cook quinoa in a salt-free or homemade broth instead of water. Unlike some grains that tend to dry out when they're cooled, quinoa maintains that pleasant, chewy texture when it's served warm, chilled, or at room temperature. So now it's time to dig into our recipe. So as I've said earlier, today's recipe is going to be a quinoa Greek salad. So these are the ingredients that you will be needing for that recipe. So it'll be a cup of 1% milk, half a cup of water, 3/4 teaspoon of dried oregano, a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, a cup of rinsed quinoa, the grated zest of a lemon, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, 4 tomatoes, 1 sweet pepper, 2 cucumbers, half of a red onion, a cup of canned red beans, and finally 3/4 cup of diced feta cheese. So let's wash our hands first. We're gonna take some soap, lather it well for at least 20 seconds, taking care to rub between fingers, back of hand, wrists, and forearms. Next step is to make sure that we're cleaning our produce before cutting them and adding it to the recipe. Make sure to get rid of any dirt. Next step, so I'm one of the people that like to rinse their quinoa before cooking it. So just make sure to lather the water in it, massage the water in the quinoa to get rid of the saponin. Now it's time to get cooking. So in a deep saucepan, you'll want to take your milk, your water, your oregano, and your pepper, and you'll want to combine them all and mix them well. Bring to a boil over medium heat, and once that is done, you'll stir in your quinoa and make sure to mix it in well so that you mix in your liquid portion to the quinoa. Next step is to reduce the heat to low. You'll want to cover and simmer for 20 minutes. And then once it's done, you let it cool and stand covered for 5 minutes. Now it's time to chop. So for the onion, you'll want to cut the onion in half. Make sure to make longitudinal cuts. and then make horizontal cuts. So now you'll want to make horizontal cuts as you're seeing on the video. Make sure to cut away from you to prevent any accidents, and then you can start dicing your onion. For the cucumber, get rid of the little parts at the top, slice it in the middle, and then cut it as seen on the video. Your tomato, you'll slice it in half, get rid of that top part here, as you can see on the video, and then you'll cut 3 small pieces of tomato, again, as presented on the video. Grab one of them and just start dicing. For the pepper, you'll want to slice it as seen on the video. You'll cut longitudinal cuts. Make sure to get rid of that white part on the inside. Be careful with the knife. And then grab 2 little strips or 1 little strip, and then you'll just cut it as seen on the video. As thick as you want or as small as you want, that is your choice. Next step is to create the zest of your lemon. Make sure to go very lightly with your hand. Now it's the time to mix in the zest in with your quinoa, so just mix it in well with your fork. You want to make sure that the flavors get mixed in well. Next step is to combine all your fresh cut produce into a big bowl. There's your cucumbers, your red beans, your diced red onion, and finally, your feta cheese. And then mix it all in. Make sure to put in the quinoa and all of the cut produce all together. And then finally, mix in your lemon juice. And again, you're gonna mix it in and combine it as well as you can. And voila, bon appetit! Finally, here are 3 ways to add quinoa into your diet. So another option for you is to substitute quinoa in place of rice in stir fries. Second is to replace pasta with quinoa in a pasta salad recipe. And then prepare as a breakfast cereal by cooking the quinoa in milk or in water, as you prefer. And you can then stir in diced fresh fruit, cinnamon, and a tablespoon of nuts. Thank you so much for joining us today in this presentation. I hope that you've learned a little bit about quinoa and that you'll want to make the recipe that I've shown you in this presentation. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye.